When Mark Cavendish made his move coming round the final corner yesterday, it looked like a familiar setup for the usual commentary punchline.
And now Cavendish is launched, the missile fires again. There's nobody can match the speed of this amazing kid.
Instead, and for the first time, we got this.
And on the line, Greipel this time has got the better of Mark Cavendish.
I'm disappointed. I feel I made a mistake, but you know, Greipel beat me, so there's not an excuse I can say about that.
Hello, it's round 3 of Cavendish versus Greipel today. We're pretty much guaranteed a bunch finish here on stage 11 in Lavore. So the two of them will be going head to head again. Head to head, but not eye to eye, either metaphorically or literally. Have a look at the contrast here. There's at least 6 inches in height and nearly a stone in weight between them. In any other sport, they wouldn't even be in the same weight division. Nonetheless, with his weightlifter's legs and his wrestler's grimace, Andre Greipel is turning into Cav's chief rival for stage wins on this tour. He was second, you'll remember, on stage 7 in Châteauroux. And in the process, he's helping out his teammate Philippe Gilbert in the green jersey race. Mark narrowed the gap to 29 points on Gilbert yesterday, but it would have been 19 if Greipel hadn't grunted past him like an Eddie Stobart overtaking an Audi. Still, depending on how the intermediate sprint goes, there's a chance we could see Cavendish in the green jersey by the end of the stage. So the stage and the green, those are the twin storylines we'll be focusing on today as the yellow jersey contenders really save their legs, hide in the bunch and wait for the Tour's arrival in the Pyrenees tomorrow. And we'll also be hearing from the most distinctive voice in the peloton.
Oh, I can't do it anymore, I can't do it anymore.
Yep, later in the show, Ned will be speaking to Jens Voigt, although if you can't wait until then, the Jens Voigt soundboard on the internet comes highly recommended. Hours of fun for all the family.
Shut up, buddy, and do what I tell you.
All right, enough messing about. Let's get on with the race and take a look at today's standings. No change at the top. Thomas Voeckler has a lead of 1 minute 49 over Luis Leon Sanchez. Then it's Cadel Evans, Frank and Andy Schleck, the HTC pairing of Tony Martin and Peter Felitz, and pretty much the last Radio Shack leader standing, Andreas Klöden. As well as leading the points competition, Philippe Gilbert is also 9th overall. Nicholas Roach is 13th, 2 spots behind Ivan Basso and 2 ahead of Robert Geesink. Alberto Contador is 16th, Samuel Sanchez 20th, David Miller 28th and Geraint Thomas 32nd. Now, of course, this is the second stint of Thomas Voeckler's career in the yellow jersey, and the first one in 2004 still lives in the collective Tour memory. Here's Ned.
And so the French drought on the Tour de France is well into its 3rd decade. Frankly, this is a nation which for too long has been surviving on scraps of success, individual performances from the likes of Virenque or Fayou, Le Quatre or Chavanel. Successes which have been celebrated, or in some cases perhaps over-celebrated. And yet, in Thomas Voeckler, the evergreen rider with a serious collection of yellow jerseys, they do have a true hero. When you wear this jersey, do you feel a great responsibility for France as well as yourself because of your status in France?
No, I just try to be myself, and I just try to do my job, and that's all.
The clock will start now, and that's when we'll find out just by how much Thomas Voeckler leads the Tour de France.
Of course, it had to be Voeckler. There was some good fortune about last Sunday, he admitted that himself. He could, for example, have very easily been taken out by the crash which eliminated Fletcher and Hogeland from the breakaway. He certainly benefited from the ill-judged temporary cessation of hostilities by Garmin, but it mattered little in the end. When he took to the podium, you didn't need a degree in psychology to second-guess what might have been going through his mind.
I'm not a dreamer. I will just fight and give all I can. And I know that it's impossible for me to keep it 10 days like 2004.
On Monday's rest day, Voeckler was joined by his family. Little Mahé was busy putting his old man through some slightly unwise interval training at the team hotel this morning. He wasn't even born the last time his dad wore the maillot jaune. 10 days which held France in a spell, but it was the 2 big mountain stages in the Pyrenees which created the myth. On the first of them, stage 12, he lost half of his advantage. The next day, Armstrong went on the attack, leaving Voeckler riding on his own further down the climb to Plateau de Bay, defending his lead for all he was worth.
5 5:04 is what he's got to beat. He can see the clock now as he lines up. He's got the yellow jersey for at least another day, probably for 2. Fantastic, what can you say?
He hung on, and life has never been the same for him since. Now, 7 years later, he finds himself facing a similar rearguard action.
Now, you know, I'm 32 years old. It's not like if I were 25, so I take day one by one and we'll see what happens. I have no pressure. I just give all I can. We'll see.
Good luck. So Vöckler is fated. His presence on a damp morning, brightening moods and raising smiles. His leftover podium treats handled with the sacred zeal of religious icons. It's an easy dream for France to dream, a harder one perhaps for Thomas Vöckler to ride into fulfilment.
Now, it shouldn't be too hard for Thomas Vöckler to defend the yellow jersey today. Stage 11 is 167.5 kilometres from Blaye-les-Mines to Lavore, with just a couple of small climbs along the way. The intermediate sprint is pretty much slap bang in the middle of the stage at Gaillac after 85 kilometres. And the day's inevitable breakaway should be reeled in before the finish, so that Greipel, Cavendish, Rojas, Gilbert and anybody else who thinks they're hard enough can fight it out at the finish. There's the rollout this morning. The good news was that Johnny Hogeland, King of the Mountains and recipient of the Tour de France Barbed Wire Cross for bravery, was in it. Jean Gadret of AG2R was not, physically and mentally shattered after the Giro d'Italia, which is a piece of interesting pre-Pyrenees information, since Alberto Contador rode it too, along with 4 of his Saxo Bank teammates. Now, as we pick up the race, there are 6 men in the day's almost certainly doomed break. Ruben Perez of Euskaltel is the best placed of them, and he's over half an hour down. With him are Tristan Valentin of Cofidis, Michael Delage of Française de Jure, Lars Bohm of Rabobank, André Grivko of Astana, and Jimmy Ongouvon of Source Sun. And as we pick up commentary, they are just approaching the day's intermediate sprint.
We're just arriving at the sprint point here, and Michael Delage looks at them. Is nobody going to go for the 1,500 euros? Well, I will. Michael Delage has gone. They've no interest in the green jersey, but he's taken out the prize, deservedly so. I think they just congratulate him because, Paul, he has now been in breakaways totaling 450 kilometres in this year's Tour de France, so he deserves that.
He certainly does. That's 1,500 euros in the bank. Well, I'll tell you one thing, Phil, it will be a slightly different approach to the line when we see the main field coming, because they will be sprinting for, yes, only 7th position, but as far as Mark Cavendish is concerned and Philippe Gilbert, it's important to keep trying to get points. Philippe Gilbert concerned about Jose Joaquim Rojas, and of course Mark Cavendish concerned about getting himself points and getting himself closer to the green jersey. And as you can see, HTC High Road are taking this very seriously. They've got the big lead-out train organised, and 3rd position there is Bernie Eisel. Just behind him is Mark Renshaw and then Mark Cavendish. But queuing up for Mark Cavendish's wheel there, you can see the riders in the dark blue jersey, and those are the Movistar riders of Rojas.
Well, here we go. This is Amiga Pharma Lotto, the green jersey, and all the big boys are helping out here now. They've only got 6 riders left on this team. Greipel, who won yesterday, is going to lead out Philippe Gilbert here for the maximum points. He sits just 1 wheel in front of him, but watch the move now, because Cavendish is being brought up on the left of the picture.
Now it's Bernie Eisel, then it'll be Matty Goss, then Mark Renshaw. They know how to do this. In fact, they've got to the front, and in fact you can just see there that Philippe Gilbert is getting squeezed out at the back end of that line. Now the big acceleration.
Well, it's foregone conclusion. Why doesn't Mark wait for the rest? He's just checking them out. He's not bothering to really open up the afterburners here. Greipel's coming after him. But it's a formality, this, and a good deal of play. Better kick again, Mark. As he swung out here, sorry, now he comes out of the slipstream, and it's a one-on-one again. Greipel and Cavendish. This time, it is Cavendish who wins, and Greipel was wondering where Philippe Gilbert was. He was leading out the green jersey, and Cavendish has got maximum points there.
Well, I'll tell you what's happening there, Phil. Instead of separating out the lead in the King of the Sprints competition, it's actually bringing all 3 of those riders together. Cavendish getting himself a good maximum points. Rojas finishing in front of Philippe Gilbert, so that'll start to bring the race together. That's Rojas just on the inside lunging the line. and his teammate there getting across in there the next position, but looking over his shoulder, Greipel saying, well, Philippe, where were you, mate?
Yes, and Gilbert got a bit mixed up in the big sprinters there, and notably Tyler Farrell wasn't contesting that, the American sprinter, so he's clearly thinking only of stage wins. He's always said all along from day one they had no real interest in the green jersey, just that we didn't believe him, but it looks as though that is the case now. So Cavendish is inching closer, but there were points also there for Philippe Gilbert. Now the breakaway continued to push on here. The Series Suzune rider is Jimmy Ongouvant. This again is another French team that was given a wild card. There was a little bit of criticism from around the world. The organisers should have given it to perhaps a Spanish or an Italian squad, but you know, it's a French race, the Tour de France, and I think they're right in helping their professional teams to gain more experience and hopefully push the sport of cycling here in France.
Well, I'm not sure what happened with Philippe Gilbert there.
He's teaching us all how to bunny hop. There's a problem. There's a problem at the back. It's a spur wheel change at the back there. Now it looks like an HTC rider. Is it Cavendish?
Yeah, I think it is Cavendish.
Yeah, it is Cavendish. He's being pushed off. Well, whatever happened, we just cut to the pictures as Gilbert took the escape route onto the sidewalk, and now Cavendish is getting himself going in. Must have been a puncture, I think.
This is Andre Greipel, the winner of yesterday's stage. I think these riders maybe just went to the back of the pack to get themselves a natural break at the same time that Mark Cavendish, in fact, had a little bit of a mechanical incident. No panic at all on board any of these faces, but a great win. By the way, this man's nickname is the Gorilla, and you can tell by just looking at the size of him.
He's a big boy, and he's showing us now he's found his sprinting legs and all of his confidence. Now it's a teammate here, Marcel Seberg, with him.
In 2009, he won 21 races on the international circuit. In 2010, he won 22 races. He really is a prolific winner.
And he just had to move on from the side of Mark Cavendish. You can't win all those races and never say you haven't ridden the Tour de France. And while Cavendish was winning stages, he was never going to be on Cavendish's team in the Tour de France.
Bernie Eisel is the rider in front of Cavendish here, pacing him back into the pack. Eisel's an incredible character. He's one of those riders who's quite happy to look after the interests of other riders, and he's pretty much become the brain of the lead out for Team HTC.
Welcome back. Now, even from this considerable distance of some way away from the UK, I can hear you all thinking exactly the same thing. Not enough Jens Voigt on the show. Well, there's one easy way of remedying that. Sit him down, stick a microphone on him, and let him talk. Last night, I did just that.
At first, you're a little shy. You know, when you have the camera in front of you, and even more when it's it's live. So you try to not think about the fact that there's maybe 1 million people watching every little bit you're saying now.
He's a world champion. That means he's not exactly a kicker, you know, he's a great rider.
Sometimes even get in trouble in school because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. So I think it's just the story of my life, just always talks.
Kick out everybody who is making our life difficult, kicking everybody out who's causing trouble, kicking everybody out who makes our life complicated and more difficult.
I think that I'm allowed to say that this might be part of the reason why I'm a little bit popular. Because people see what they get and you get what they see. There's no faking, you know, that's just what I say, what I show, what I do, that's what I am.
The determination of Voigt has triumphed on the day. That was an extraordinary finish for Jens Voigt.
The Tour still, it's a challenge, it's an adventure, it's the hardest thing you probably can do. Have seen, I would think, the whole variety of feelings you can have, from loving the Tour, hating it, from triumph, from pain, from scandals. I mean, my first tour was already the Festina Tour. Then had some great tours, some successes for myself personally. We had this beautiful year in 2008 where we won the Tour de France with Carlos Sastre. We all around him on this podium on the Champs-Élysées, looking down the Champs-Élysées. And it's done, you did it, and the next morning there's no more pain, no more stress for you, and that was a fabulous moment actually. Then I crashed the last 2 years. I had some really hard crashes, only one per year, but hard ones. But I would like to think that I still kept a little bit of this fresh spirit, of this enthusiasm for my sport. I think I still kept a little bit of that all through this years.
Who's impressed you more than anyone else?
Well, myself, 40 years old, still selected for the tour team, still there kicking around,
I think I have seen the whole thing from all different angles you can look at it.
So there we go, Jens Voigt being Jens Voigt, at which he is, it has to be said, extremely good. And there'll be more from him in the next part. In the meantime, though, let's get back to the racing.
1 minute 36, the gap now has just slipped to 1:37, 1 kilometre to the summit of the Puy-Laurent. They're holding on to quite a big chunk of the lead. They lost 15 seconds very quickly, now they've pegged it again. 33 kilometres to go, just over 20 miles. I think, and now we're changing direction. The wind will come from the left shoulder, and that's going to push the riders over to the right as we go towards the finish in Lavaux. And that might be the downfall of the breakaway, but I'm just wondering how much it will hurt the sprinters as well.
Well, I think it will, as once we get over the top of this climb, we actually start to get out into the open countryside once more, and that's when they'll start to feel the wind battering against their faces. Different teams now looking attentive at the front. This is Fabian Cancellara on his wheel, Andy Schleck. Schleck has not done a thing wrong in the Tour de France so far, and the same could be said for Cadel Evans, the Australian. Just saw him peeping through there, Phil. He's not thinking of attacking at this point. All he wants to do is make sure that if there's an acceleration over the top of the climb, he's in the front end of the business part of the peloton.
Simon Gerrans, Ryder Hesjedal, the Canadian on Garmin Cervelo. Interesting new faces appeared there now because of the speed they're climbing. They are paying close attention to this. Just about a third of a kilometre left for the leaders. None of them have an interest in Johnny Hoogeland's King of the Mountains polka dot jersey, so he'll wear that again tomorrow, and there's only 1 point for the first rider over the top. Look at the crowd here now as we run into the last 32 kilometres of the day. Now, the way they're riding tempo with some of the bigger teams with long-term thoughts of victory in France in the Tour, like BMC's riders on the front for Cadel Evans, for example, maybe they're going to push and try and split this field.
Just all depends on the weather conditions, and the team managers will have gone back, had the information sent back. Now look, from the tailwind that we had about 20 kilometres ago, I just noticed the flags over on the left-hand side there. They were coming right across the riders. It's a cross headwind, and that makes it ideal for trying to split up the peloton.
Michael Delarge has taken out the 1 point available at the top there. It's going to be a very, very hard last few kilometres of the race today, and we're going to see some interesting racing here. It won't be a pure sprinter's finish, although a sprinter may survive to win it. But these boys are going to really race very, very hard at the front now. Right in our camera lens is the young American here, Brent Buchwalter, very valued pacemaker on the side of Cadel Evans, the Australian. This is Ryder Hesjedal here, also for Garmin Cervelo. And he's just about to make a nice little run here. He's looking now for a good place for their sprinter, who is Tyler Farrar.
Well, Farrar's a very fast sprinter, and I think very happy to open up his account, becoming a member of the very rare club of riders who've won stages in all three of the Grand Tours, stages in the Tour of Italy, Tour de France, and of course the Vuelta a España.
Good pacemaking here now by the Canadian, the only Canadian rider in the race. And look at all of the riders on the right there in the white for HTC High Road, poised in the wings.
And everyone riding close to the front end of the peloton because they realise it's important. Little chat there going on. And this is where it's precarious. Now you can see the flags there coming in from a slightly diagonal angle. And that's when we have to pay attention when you're looking to see whether or not there's going to be an acceleration coming from one of the teams who have leaders right up near the front end of the pack. Nervous times for all of these riders now as they head down towards the finish. That's nasty.
In 2009, you had that horrific accident. Is it all a blur? Has your memory come back of the accident or not?
Fortunately, it's not, because I don't want to have this memories back. It's just going to be full of pain. So I have I would think, a loss for about half an hour. I was apparently 3 minutes really unconscious, where I didn't answer and react to them. But I had a loss of 30 minutes. I remember the last thing I saw before was I'm drifting back in the group to the last position to get more bottles. And then the next thing I remember after that is I'm laying on my back and looking at the ambulance. I was already in the ambulance and I'm thinking, how the heck did I get in here? And then of course the next thought is, why does everything hurt so much? And then you realize, okay, I must have crashed. Memory goes then on and off. I remember I was in the first hospital. He said, no, it's too complicated for us, go somewhere else. And I had a helicopter flight. I remember a little bit of that. They stitched me together actually. That was a terrible moment actually. Like I sort of like waking up and I see them stitching my right hand together. I see another team stitching on my head, like putting stitches in here. And I see the third team already disinfecting my right hand to put stitches in there as well. I'm like, give me a break. Do one after the other, not do it all at once, you know? So as I said, 2 teams stitching here and on my head, and the third team already preparing to stitch me together on the other hand. Yeah, and then I said, hey, I need to call my wife to tell her that I'm alive. It's no doubt that everybody has to suffer to go through a tour. You suffer to win it, you suffer to finish it. But that's just part of the job, and I think, fortunately for myself, early enough in my career, I realized that a lot of hard work and a lot of suffering already in training makes you better, makes you harder, it makes you winning more races, or makes you more successful. Eddy Merckx, who is undoubtedly our biggest rider ever, he said, the one who suffers the most wins in the end. I somehow took this idea in my head and it paid off for me. I realized that, okay, it's suffering now, but you get a reward for it. It's terrible if you suffer and you never have a reward. That must be terrible, right? Obviously, my role in the team is changing. I'm not the champion. I'm not the one that's supposed to win and attack and take the stages, but I'm the one that prepares the stage for the others. And now when you become like to the later stadium of your career, you realize, you know what? It is as great to help the others and see them winning and celebrate together after the stage in the bus or in the hotel and be happy with the boys you helped to win. So it's the same suffering, it's always involved, but that is just part of the job. I mean, it's no bowling what we do here.
.9 kilometers, 52 seconds the gap. The spots on the camera lens indicates the wet roads, and the rain has started on the riders too. And looking out of our commentary box window, it's getting very dark, almost uncannily on cue for the finish.
And when I mentioned a little earlier that there was no wind in the finishing straight, the wind has also got up, and it's a crosswind down the finishing straight. And finally, the flags here are starting to ripple.
You call that rippling, I call that a good day for sailing. Those flags are dead straight across the riders from the left shoulder as they come to the line right now. Ryder Hejjedal working hard for Garmin Cervelo and no doubt for Tyler Farrar. Lars Bak working hard for HTC High Road and certainly Mark Cavendish. And it's going to be very unpleasant there now. And look at the speed too. We are just inside 50 miles an hour. And that's how fast they're going with a crosswind. That's incredible. The leaders are still 50 seconds ahead on slick roads as they pass under 15 kilometers to go. They still must have a chance because of the changing weather conditions.
Well, you might just have noticed the race referees have pulled out all of the team cars that were following this breakaway because the referees now believe that this break is going to get caught. They will still leave one final car, and that's just a quick glimpse of the final kilometer there, and you can see the wind really is pelting down.
49 seconds now.
So this is the peloton. This is Lars Bak on the front in the white jersey with the Danish bands around his sleeves. Amazing to figure out where he gets his power from. At 31 years of age, he's participating in the Tour de France for the first time. He's been around for such a long time. I was quite astounded to realize that. So still a little bit of firepower left in the peloton, but 14.5 kilometers is just inside of 10 miles of racing to the finishing line. Lars Bak seems to be the strongest rider in this group. Lars Boom seems to be the strongest rider in this group, number 43. He's always happy to come to the front and set the pace.
48 seconds from the race radio, 46 seconds on the computer. And the field now are on wet roads here, and they must exercise a little bit of caution as well. The tyres are going to be pumped up rather hard for road surfaces like this. The finishing line Well, it's fit for ducks, and we do have a duck that walks up and down every day, but he's going to feel at home right now. Well, it is heavy rain where the riders are, but it's nothing to the rain in the next couple of kilometres they are going to encounter. I feel very sorry for the crowd here. They are being absolutely soaked. They can't get out of the grandstands. There's too many people in them, and they've got no umbrellas and no rainwear, and they are being soaked by a torrential downpour at the finish. The race is coming in there. We're looking at 41 seconds gap, 13 kilometres out from home. They're just hanging on in there. Well, I'll tell you, the rider at the front, Lars Bohm, because of his cyclocross winter experience, he'll be in his element here in these conditions.
Absolutely no problem for the big Dutchman there in the orange jersey of Rabobank. The other orange jersey is Ruben Perez. He might not be too happy. He's a more slightly built rider, probably got a lower body fat content than Lars Bohm, and he will find that the rain and the cold going right into his muscles.
These are the riders. That's one of the rare glimpses you had today of the yellow jersey of the Tour de France, Thomas Voigtler. He's kept his powder dry today, that's for sure. Just getting to the finish, all the riders will be tied together. He'll keep his lead to take that maillot jaune into the mountains tomorrow. That'll be another story, of course. The gap is 42 seconds now. The distance to go, 12 kilometres. They're in sight. The 6 leaders are inside 12 kilometres from the finish. If you look right down through the row of plane trees, you'll see the lead motorcycles. The peloton is almost in sight now of the breakaways, and they're probably going to pick them up about 8 kilometres out from the finish. There is the storm hanging over the department of the Tarn, and I think most of it is crashing down on the finishing line right now.
Well, the organisers seem to have stayed true to the theme of this year's race and put some gradient in the final. But hang on, they seem to have installed this one upside down, because this drag slopes towards the line. Yes, if the sprinters could have written the script for this finish, this is how it would read. No hills in the final few kilometres, and so straight that on my morning reconnaissance I could almost see the finish from 4 kilometres out. And with a good grippy surface, even the heavy showers we're having shouldn't put a dampener on today's run-in. Today is the very last roll call for the sprinters before the Pyrenees gives them an enforced break. Mark Cavendish needs every single sprint point that he can get, but as yesterday showed, he's not going to get them without a fight. Once there, Tyler Farrar might pop back up. The ever-present Jose Joaquim Rojas may at last get his shot, and of course, having now tasted success, André Greipel could find he has a fully committed team behind him. With about 5 kilometres to go, there is the tiniest of blips which might offer an opportunity for the non-climbers, but more than likely, it's going to end up in a mass gallop. Well, it might be damp here in Lavore, but I, for one, am still expecting a fireworks finale. Oh, that was cheesy. Who wrote that line?
10 Ks from the finish for the 6 leaders, 31 seconds the gap, the chase is on, the rain is on, at least it's beginning to ease at the finish. They might get an okay finish after all. The skies are brightening very quickly. All the work being done by the riders of HTC High Road.
That is Matty Goss. He's normally a lead-out man for Mark Cavendish. They're having to use all of their firepower here to pull it back to the fold. Just going to the back, this is Lars back. That's not a surprise, Phil. He's done an incredible job of work throughout the whole of this stage with Danny Pate.
The rain has started on the course again. Look at this now. It's ironically, it's gone off at the finishing line. It's moved up the road and it's hit the riders. Look at the face on the right there. Fabian Cancellara trying to protect the Schleck brothers. Andy just behind him there. Well, the problem is now these boys haven't given up. Hey, that's not in the script. They're supposed to give up now and go back into the field. They refuse to do that. 6 kilometres to go. They've only lost 6 seconds since 10 kilometres to go of their lead. Now, this is making it extremely difficult for HTC High Road because they are using too many men to close the gap to the leaders and therefore losing the men who will lead out Cavendish for the finish. And it's going to be a difficult sprint for all of the sprinters now.
Well, these guys now are going to be starting to think, right, this is a possibility of a victory here this afternoon, so somebody may well try to make a move on the run-in towards the finish. Finally, HTC have got some help. It's the pale blue and pink jerseys of Team Lamprey. And just at the back there, and the wheel of Mark Cavendish, you can see a rider on a lime green bike, and that, of course, is Alessandro Petacchi.
Well, it took a while, but at last Lamprey has realised the seriousness of this situation. They have a big sprinter in Alessandro Petacchi, but they finally put two boys on the front to help out. Fletcher, the man that crashed in that terrible accident a couple of days ago, now slipping towards the back of the race here.
But as we're getting closer to the finish now, the urgency coming into the teams of the sprinters, they do not want to get cheated of their chance of glory this afternoon, because after this it's into the high mountains, and they will be into the Autobus, the group of riders at the back of the Tour de France who struggle to survive.
A tall figure in black has come through now, replaced Simon Gerrans for Sky, is Christian Knies, the German man, former German champion on their squad. These are the leaders, still getting on with the job in hand, and agonizingly slowly the big pack is pulling them back. The clock is saying 15 seconds now, 5 kilometers to go to the finish. They're getting desperate in the peloton, the road's remaining quite narrow as you run down towards the finish in Lavaux.
9 seconds is the official gap between the 6-man leading group and the front end of the main field, and it's still under the control of Team Lamprey. Big move now coming from Lars Boom. This is a last desperate ditch effort.
4.5 kilometers. Mikel Delarge is really digging deep for the energy, and a little bit of an attack going there by Ruben Perez. No, it's by Bohm himself who's made the move. And Lars Bohm now, is he going to ride alone to the finish and fool the sprinters at their own game? This guy can do it. He's the time trial champion of Holland. He's also a terrific man against the watch.
Well, he's the one rider in that breakaway who could possibly create the surprise. He knows how to master this very explosive effort. He's learned that from cyclocross in the winter, because probably the most important kilometre in the cyclocross race, Phil, is the first kilometre. You've got to go out to the starting gate and get yourself into the first difficulties in the first positions. Lamprey now taking over some help. There's Bernie Eisel sitting in second position. Behind him it's Tony Martin. Behind him it's Mark Renshaw. The black and white jerseys on the right-hand side of HTC High Road are, of course, Team Leopard Trek. That's Fabian Cancellara locked on his wheel, as if he's a limpet mine locked onto a submarine, is Andy Schleck.
For inside 4 kilometers to go for Lars Bohm now, as he ties the time trial away from the field, which will take some doing. He's going to have to hit 50 kilometers an hour at least and hold it now as he runs down to the finish. This is everything or nothing for him. As he pushes on now, the peloton are slowly wrapping it all up behind him, as out of the mare comes about 160 cyclists racing in a long straight line towards Lavaux.
Well, Andre Grivko, he's back in the folder. Ruben Perez is resisting a fraction, only about 50 yards off the front end of this main field. And Lars Boom really has put in a solid effort there. You can see the remnants of the breakaway. It's now, they're going to get swept up. That will leave just one man off the front of the peloton here this afternoon, and one man who could create the massive surprise and outwit the sprinters, Lars Boom.
3 kilometers to go as they pass under the banner. Everybody is back except one man. So the breakaway went 13 kilometers in. Most have been caught at 3 to go. Lars Bohm is still disrupting the thought of the sprinters here, as the workhorses from their teams are still having to try to reel this man in.
His legs are burning now with the lactic acid that's starting to build up in them. As you can see, the concentration on the faces of these riders. Fabian Cancellara is not thinking about sprint victories this afternoon. All he wants is to make sure that Andy Schleck is comfortably and safely taken to the finishing line. It's Bernie Eisel doing a man against man, trying to pull himself back to the wheel of the Dutchman Lars Boom.
Just notice Mark Renshaw there sitting in front of Mark Cavendish, just keeping him safe and sound on the left of our picture. And that's it now. We all come together at just over 2 kilometers from the finish. The sprinters have it now as they line up for the finish. And High Road have still got a few riders here, but only 3 of them. The middle man is Mark Renshaw. Tony Martin leads, and Cavendish is checking out who's around him. Well, I can tell him that Rocas is getting rather close to him and looking for the perfect lead out.
David Miller now comes to the front in the blue helmet. Behind him it's Thor Hushoff. That obviously means that the sprinter for Team Garmin-Cervelo this afternoon is going to be Tyler Farrar, the American. He should be in 3rd position there. It's still a very long way to go to the line.
Another demonstration of how to ride a great time trial by the Scot here, David Miller. He really is superb at this sort of a run. They're looking now 1.5 kilometres to go. Farah is the man on the far right, battling to get into the line.
Julian Dean trying to get himself in front of his team leader here. Julian Dean, the pilot fish there, floating in the wind, is the 1 kilometre flag. The main field is under the control of Garmin Cervelo. David Miller will do a long turn. He will try and leave the last lead out to Thor Hushovd, who's there in his World Championship jersey, and now getting himself into that line is Julian Dean, the Kiwi. Zigging and zagging on
dodgy riding going on the right there, with the elbow going out, as we see now Sky coming through in the middle here. Sky are going to get mixed up with this one today as they now get under that 1 kilometre to go. Are they getting control of the peloton for the British squad?
Well, Team Sky now riding alongside the team of Garmin Cervelo. It's Julian Dean who's on the front, of making a massive big turn here. Slipping back into about 4th position is Thor Hushovd.
Now, as they line up for the finish now, Greipel is also in the mix here again. He's going to look for Mark Cavendish. Tyler Ferrara has got himself too early on the front on the right now as they open up the sprint on the left here. Cavendish is 3rd in line. Renshaw is waiting to lead Cavendish. That's off the final bend. Now Renshaw goes. He's got the Max missile locked into his back wheel. Tyler Ferrara's gone onto the wheel of Cavendish, and Farah has gone onto the wheel of Cavendish, but Cavendish doesn't care. Here he comes, Mark Cavendish and Andre Greipel. He looks at Greipel, he grips again. Oh boy, revenge is very, very sweet as Cavendish wins. Greipel gets second and Farah gets third. Well, it just took 24 hours to get your own back.
Well, that was a perfect lead out once again by Mark Renshaw of Australia to put Mark Cavendish in the right position to just accelerate and catapult himself to the finishing line. There's the yellow jersey of Thomas Vogelfeld, so there'll be no more change in the overall standings. Cavendish, Greipel, right up there as well, Tyler Farah.
Well, a tremendous result of pure sprinters, and see, Mark Cavendish missed his man yesterday in Mark Renshaw, who was dropped on the final climb and couldn't take him to the line. But it's all back to status quo now as Mark Renshaw delivered the missile to a perfect liftoff, and he's just pipped Andre Greipel in the sprint.
Well, it was a comfortable pipping, as pippings go. Cavendish, Greipel, Tyler Farah, who's been almost invisible since his Stage 3 win, 3rd. Then Denis Galimzianov, Edvald Bosenhagen, Romain Fayou, Jose Joaquin Rojas and Sebastian Turgot. All the big names finished together in that group on the same time, although it wasn't the time that was important for Philippe Gilbert, it was the placing, and he was 66th, well out of the points. What's more, his Omega Pharma Lotto teammate couldn't limit the damage by beating Cavendish to the line.
Today, were you aware of Andre Greipel on your wheel and when he made his move, his effort?
No. I just went, today I just said I'll kick. I don't care who's there, I kick, and when I kick, normally I'll get a gap and I'll win, and that was all I wanted to do today. It was quite dangerous. The finish one rider, like, it was so close. It was Filou. I'm not saying the same like I did last time. It wasn't dangerous, but we were so close together that his wheel caught on the ratchet of my shoe. My shoe came undone with 500 to go. I had to stop. If you watch the overhead, you see me take my buckle and put it back in my shoe again, and have to do up with 500 to go, you know.
And you got the green jersey. Did you know that?
Oh, have I? Oh, lovely. Oh,
not bad. Go up there. Well done.
Mary, thanks, man.
Now, it took us a while, but we did find the shot of Mark doing up his shoe. It's actually at 800 to go. We'll cut him some slack on that. And you need to be looking really closely and probably in high def to see it. But there is a lean down with his left arm here as he emerges from the trees. And you can just see it on the front shot too as he comes into view between the black Sky jersey to the left of him as we look at it and the white Garmin one on the right. And now that's cleared up, we can get on with the ceremonials. A double podium appearance for Mark Cavendish tonight. First the flowers for winning the stage, then the key costume change from the white and yellow of HTC into the green he'd like still to be wearing when the race reaches Paris. And when he starts flirting with Ned, you know he's in a good mood.
No, it's incredible. It's so nice to wear it again finally, you know. I think the colour suits me, don't you, Ned?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a spectacular success, that colour. Listen,
Ned, the master of off-the-cuff diplomacy, keeps him sweet for the next interview. And that's how the green points competition now looks. Cavendish leading on 251, 16 ahead of Jose Joaquin Rojas, and with 20 now on Philippe Gilbert, who slips to 3rd. No change in the King of the Mountains classification. All Johnny Hergeland had to do was get round today, and he managed it, although he did look stiff stepping off the podium.
Johnny, how was it today?
Tough, but better than yesterday.
Most of your bandages are off now. I take it that's a good sign.
No, it's not. If it was not raining, it was still on, but I put it off after the race because I'm scared of infection. So I let the doctor of the race come to disinfect it, and then in the bus I will do this again.
When will the stitches come out, do you know?
The doctor said the best is after the tour.
Okay, and just finally, is your race now about just survival, or can you try and defend your jersey?
Tomorrow I'm gonna try, but I don't know if it's realistic.
Okay, good luck.
Thanks.
Thanks, Johnny.
No problems today for Thomas Verkler. They'll begin tomorrow in the mountains, although if he can summon the spirit of 2004, he might just hang on for a day. There's the pre-Pyrenean standings then. Verkler, Sanchez, Evans, a couple of Schlecks, a couple of HTCs, Martin and Velits, and a single Klurden. No changes further down either, really. Alberto Contador remains exactly a minute 30 behind Andy Schleck heading into the mountains, although we have just lost another man. No sooner had he rolled in 6th after undoing Mark Cavendish's shoe than Romain Fayou abandoned with tendinitis. So Cav takes a 2-1 lead over Greipel, his 3rd stage win of the Tour, the 18th Tour stage win of his career. That's probably enough numbers. How about some analysis?
Well, there's been some people doubting Cavendish after yesterday because that jump by Greipel was really something to see. But I think why he does make the big bucks is because he's so consistent and he can take a defeat like that and come back. I learned that last year when I wrote him off on one stage, and then he went on to win all of those. So, you know, this guy's just incredibly consistent.
All right, Cav is going to be hiding in the pack tomorrow. After the 92 kilometre to go mark, that is, that's when the intermediate sprint comes up on tomorrow's stage. But largely it's about the Pyrenees. We're going to preview that stage right after the competition and a look at the route map. This week, courtesy of Halfords, we're giving you the chance to take inspiration from the Tour and ride away on a set of his and hers Boardman road bikes worth a total of £1,700. Plus, if you enter any of our 3 competitions during this year's Tour, you'll be entered into a second draw to win 2 places for you and a friend on the Étape du Tour 2012, courtesy of Rafa. We also have an exclusive Rafa Special Edition Galibier jersey for 10 runners-up. Call 090 4959 6060. Calls cost no more than £1 and 3 pence from BT landlines. Calls from other networks may be higher, and from mobiles will be considerably more. Or you can text BIKES to 83366. Text costs £1 plus 1 standard network rate message. Red button viewers can enter by pressing their red button now. You can also enter free at itv.com. Entrance must be 18 or over, and lines close at 4 p.m. on the 18th of July. Entries made after closing time won't be counted, but may still be charged. Now then, here we go. Stage 12 takes the Tour into the Pyrenees. Cugnot is the start town, although unless you live in Cugnot, the start town is really neither here nor there. The intermediate sprint is at the 92 kilometre to go mark, and then there are 3 big climbs. The Orquette d'Ancison, which is new to the race, the giant Col du Tourmalet, which isn't being tackled for the 80th time, and the final climb to Lousard-Iden. The big names will probably be together at the foot of it. The question is whether or not they will be at the top. Well, David Miller's been at the front almost the entire Tour for Garmin, so he's as well placed as anyone to pass judgment on who's looking good for tomorrow.
I think the usual suspects. I think the Schlecks and Alberto. I mean, that's who it's going to be between. So it's going to be, I think, Alberto's going to have to unleash the fury tomorrow, immediately set the tone, which knowing him he will. So looking forward to watching that in the highlights.
Now, for the first big mountain stage, we're on 2 hours early. Live coverage from noon of stage 12 to try to make sure we miss none of the action. There are highlights as usual at 7. Then the 2009 Tour film Chasing Legends, so we've colonised pretty much the whole ITV4 schedule tomorrow. Now, Chris, Andy Schleck said before the Tour that the race really starts at Lousard-Iden. That turned out not to be true because there's been so much incident involving the favourites in the first week with crashes and what have you, but it effectively does. Who's standing best going into it, do you think?
Well, every interview that he's given, he's just been incredibly dark and focused, really, and quite an ominous figure. I think the fact that Frank hasn't had a mishap this year has got to be good as well, because he looks in great form. They just haven't put a foot wrong, and Contador, of course, on the proverbial back foot, so he's got to do
something. I'm not sure it's going to happen tomorrow, though. I think if Evans, who's looked good all the first week, I think if he sees an opportunity, he may try to steal a few more seconds. He's going to need it.
Okay. The first big showdown of the 2011 Tour de France in the mountains then, live tomorrow from noon here on ITV4. Andy Schleck is a dark and ominous presence apparently, and he's growing a moustache. Look out for him.